A couple months ago, I went on a road trip with my three friends all the way to Philadelphia and rented out an Airbnb. It was a simple, small house in a location that suited us. We planned to join this cool indie concert the next day and stay for a week as a mini vacation. Just us four guys, ready for some dumb fun, really. The place was cheap, though, and seemed to be a relatively new listing with no reviews. I guess we were so naively overconfident in ourselves that we saw this as a great opportunity. I made the booking, chatting with the host, who seemed pretty chill, although he had a profile picture of some cars. Still, he answered whatever I asked him readily, and, like I already said, the location suited us a lot. So, as planned, we arrived at the house and found the key under the welcome mat, just as the host said. The house had 3 bedrooms upstairs and 1 downstairs, along with bathrooms, a kitchen, and a main lounge. Overall, it was an okay place in a quiet neighborhood where everyone kept to themselves. Our first 2 days went by smoothly. The concert was amazing, and we actually found another underground show scheduled for Saturday, the final day of our stay. Of course, we got tickets for it at once. Now, all this aside, there was one odd thing 2 of my friends noticed at different times. A black van with tinted windows made the rounds in the neighborhood. It had a faded logo on its side saying Jerry Cleaners. It would make the rounds even at the dead of night, as observed by one of our insomniac friends. Out of curiosity, we also looked up this company online, only to find nothing. With how much time passed by our rented house, we joked that maybe we were being stalked. I wish we had been a bit more sensible, honestly. During all this, I also got a message from the host asking us how our stay was going. I told him that it was great, and since he knew about the first concert we had come for, he also asked about that. He seemed to be a fan of music, so I shared the new underground concert we had heard of, and he said that he might check it out himself. Looking back, I cringe at my own gullibility, but trust me, he was so easy to talk to that I didn't think anything bad whatsoever. That night, us guys were upstairs playing a stupid board game when we heard a loud crash from the main lounge downstairs. It sounded like a window had been broken. It shocked us so much that we sat there frozen, unable to believe that this was actually happening. Like I previously said, the neighborhood was pretty peaceful, so we certainly didn't expect such vandalism. Then we heard people downstairs. It sounded like a group of around 5 men, each sounding older than us, maybe in their 40s. Very systematically, they were looking around downstairs, which meant that we were trapped. We didn't know if they were armed or just how strong they were, trying not to go into full-blown panic mode. The window was a bad idea. I heard one man say, "Yeah, well, our genius princess didn't have a second key, so what else were we supposed to do?" Another sarcastically answered, "Did they mean the host?" It chilled me to know that I had basically given out our schedule to a total stranger on a silver platter just because he sounded friendly enough. Hearing them coming upstairs, we blocked the room's door with as many things as we could. Thankfully, the window was big enough and could open without a hitch, so it provided our escape. The drop was high, though, and we didn't know if the ground below was safe. I suppose when the intruders began to bang on the room's door, our decision was made. One of my friends ended up with a fractured arm, and I myself sprained my ankle really badly. The other 2 were lucky, helping us hobble over to the nearest house with a light on. We couldn't take a chance on our car since the intruders seemed quite experienced in this sort of thing. Hence, the car probably wouldn't even start or had flat tires. Thankfully, the house we ended up at had a nice family living in it who called the cops for us. Our guess turned out to be correct about the car, as the police shared later. The intruders knew of our escape and prioritized getting away themselves, so they were never caught. The host also deleted his profile and is yet to be caught as well. I still wonder, what was their plan for us? We're lucky that we never found out. Back in October of 2018, I was visiting Utah from Detroit for a 3-day medical seminar. I found out about the seminar at the last minute, so I booked an Airbnb close to it without being too cautious. It was a small guest room attached to the host's house. It was completely separate, with its own main door and an electronic keypad lock. However, the neighborhood wasn't the best, and most of the houses were shabby. It was the type of place where you wouldn't want to walk out alone at night. Of course, I only intended to stay for 3 days max, so I wasn't too bothered. The host gave me the door code, and that was that. We didn't meet in person, although from his profile picture, he seemed like an average guy. Upon arriving, I noticed that the host's house seemed empty. See, I arrived in the evening, and with all the lights off, I almost drove past the place. I didn't see it appropriate to ask since the room I had was nice and clean, with some complimentary things to boot. The first day went by in peace, and I was glad to have joined the seminar. The next day, in the afternoon, while I was working on my laptop without wearing any headphones, I paused when I heard some very soft clattering coming from the main house. Now, let me mention that this little room had one tiny window looking into the barren backyard, and it was also firmly barred with metal grills. I wanted to pop out and see if the host was home, maybe say hi, but I felt too awkward. I was nosy enough to listen in, but weirdly enough, I didn't hear anything more. When I left in the evening, no lights were on in the house either. I briefly wondered if maybe the owners had left a restless pet all alone. Sure, I didn't hear any animal sounds, but the thought stayed in the back of my mind. It was a good thing that I was traveling light and took my laptop and cash with me that evening. When I came back, immediately I knew someone had been in my room. There was a very subtle, sweaty smell, and generally, things felt off. I don't have photographic memory, but I trust my gut instinct. It's why I didn't unpack my bag, which had everything of value in it, placing it on the edge of the bed as is. I looked around the room to see if any of my clothes and whatnot were stolen. Thankfully, everything was accounted for. I then searched the nooks and crannies for any hidden cameras. It's a bit unreasonable, but after all the weird stories I've read, it never hurts to be cautious. Sure, I'm a guy myself, but I like my privacy. Instead of any cameras, I found scrape marks near this giant vintage armoire. They didn't seem new and were rather deep, as if the thing had been moved back and forth a lot. It was a shock when I realized that it wasn't that heavy, more so when I found an actual door behind it. This was so strange that I honestly questioned if I was dreaming or something. It didn't have any doorknobs and could easily be swung open, leading to the main house. With my heart racing, I walked into the dark house, scrunching up my nose at that same sweaty smell. The house probably didn't have a single open window, given how stuffy it felt. It was also an absolute mess inside, with random trash, empty cans, and clutter all over the place. I only looked around the downstairs lounge my room was connected to before I decided to just leave the weird place. Just as I was backing away, I froze, hearing a creak from my left. When I dared to look, my jaw nearly hit the floor, seeing an actual person standing in the darkness with only one of the streetlights outside, and my room providing meager light. It was a haunting image. How long had he been watching me? How did I not notice him before? He came rushing at me all of a sudden, so I also haphazardly backed off. I nearly fell on the rather sharp clutter on the floor, rushing into my room. I felt a strong tug on the back of my hoodie and nearly fell a second time. It was open up front, so I swiftly took it off, shocked to see that the man was the same as the host's profile picture. Somehow I kept my wits about me, grabbed my backpack, and drove away as quickly as humanly possible. I called the police, and the creep was arrested for attempted assault and robbery. The moral of the story? Always research the place you're renting. My name is Samantha, and I'm what you may call a solo female traveler. I've always wanted to see the world and go on adventures, But this particular incident I'm about to share was something of a nightmare. Now, before I begin, I must preface it by saying that traveling as a lone woman is not that safe. I have to take plenty of precautions and generally be on my guard. It's why I do extra research when I'm looking for a place to stay. Hotels are usually very expensive, at least the good ones are, so I look into alternate options too. My go-to choice is an Airbnb if possible, although I prefer to have a female host to be extra safe. I was visiting Budapest and had found a super cheap condo. The host sounded really nice, and from her picture, she seemed like a homely, middle-aged woman. Imagine my surprise when I arrived there and was greeted by a man instead. He too was middle-aged, tall, and had a good physique. He told me that he was the husband since, currently, his poor wife had come down with the flu. I didn't like this situation, so I decided to stay one single night and then find an alternate place to stay. However, later, I got an apology from the wife, so I dismissed my own misgivings as paranoia. My decision to move elsewhere remained the same because the condo was dirty. The toilet seemed like it had never been cleaned. The mattress under the old yellowed sheet had stains, and there was a weird smell in the place overall. It seemed to be emitting from the big upper cabinets above the closet right in the bedroom. I complained about it to the host, the wife, that is, and she seemed unaware of it all. Annoyed, I decided to sleep on the couch in the lounge and just tough it out for the night. I had found a cheap hotel to stay at, a place that had great reviews. Just as I was drifting off, I heard footsteps approach my main door. I stayed super quiet, nervous that whoever it was had simply stopped outside the door. The speed with which I bolted up and rammed myself against the door when I heard the person try to unlock it with a key was unreal. I was putting all my weight against the door, but a male voice told me to ease off. I recognized that voice. It was the husband of the host. On my guard, I slowly backed away as he sheepishly stood in the doorway. I demanded to know what the deal was and how he could intrude on my privacy like that. He said that he mixed up the property he and his wife were renting. According to him, they owned 2 condos in the building. I didn't really buy it, but I tried not to antagonize him either. I made it pretty clear that I wasn't happy with any of it, telling him to leave, but he had the audacity to joke around. He also offered to take a look at the high cabinet that was stinking up the bedroom, trying to casually come in and close the door behind him. I admit that I was very nervous that night, scared even. I was already in a foreign country where I knew no one, so you can imagine how I was barely keeping my panic in check. He wouldn't take the hint, keeping his tone jovial but pushy, as I too refused to budge from my spot, trying to make him back off enough to close the door on him. I could tell that he was getting annoyed with me. His smile was becoming painfully fake. Just as things were devolving into an argument, a man and a woman passed by in the hallway, pausing at our open door. "Is everything all right?" the man asked me, and the woman also noted my nervousness. I think this chance encounter was what really saved me that night. The husband of the host soon assured the neighbors that all was well, made some jokes, and left. He closed the door behind him, talking to the neighbors and cutting me out. I didn't care. I just wanted the damn night to be over so I could stay somewhere better, somewhere safer. The next day, I ran into the woman from the previous night. She quietly asked me if I was the new girlfriend. "What?" No, I was just renting the place," I told her. "Besides, isn't he married?" "Married? I hope no one marries that womanizer." She said it in disdain. I had chills from realizing that I had been talking to this creep this whole time. Who was the woman in his profile picture? I never found out and got away as quickly as possible.